Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Gaming Show. I'm your co-host, Ryan, joined by...
Oh, I'm Lobos.
Hi, Lobos. It is July 27th, 2019. We're playing Half-Life, which was released on the PC November 19th, 1998.
98, huh?
This is one of my favorite games. I'd put this on top 10 easily.
I love this game. I hadn't played it in a very long time, but I had very vivid memories about it, and it was just such an iconic game for the time that it spawned so much, like almost as influential as Doom was for like FPSs practically.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to talk about that a little bit because in Doom and, Wolfenstein and Quake and all those sorts of games, you kind of got in the action right away. It spawned you got a gun, you started shooting people.
Sure, yeah.
This was the first game in which that didn't happen. In fact, you don't really kill anyone for the first, I'd say, 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And I remember reading about this game, and this scene we're watching right now, this scene where you're on this tram to go to work, and you're going through these environments, and you're setting up the scene. You see people walking around. You have this PA kind of talking to you about the temperature and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
This was revolutionary in its day, and it blew me away because it really was setting up this scene. It was setting up the world in a way that other games just kind of dropped you into the action. And so you're right. This game spawned almost a new style of this cinematic first-person shooters, which is really, really amazing. And you still see the influences today.
Yeah, there's like a whole I don't know what, depending on how fast you go, 10, 15-minute sequence of just you listening to stuff while the kind of the environment and everything is set up, and then you wandering around this facility where you're like, oh, okay, I worked here, I work here now, and I'm just coming to work just to do my job. Cool, all right.
Yeah, and you go into the bathroom and pick up your suit, and you're talking to scientists, and they're like, hey, nothing going on today, Freeman.
Yeah, get over to the testing chamber.
But what was also kind of cool was everyone seems to know your name as you come in here. They're like, oh, Freeman, how you doing? And that was kind of cool. It's like, Freeman's been around for a while. Everyone knows him. You get the sense this is sort of like a small office type environment.
Yeah.
Maybe not the case, but it certainly seems from the onset of the game that it's a nice place to work.
Well, perhaps what also creates that effect is that a lot of the scientists look exactly the same. So you're like, did he just run over to this other spot while I was talking to this scientist? And wait, no, there's two of them in the same room. Oh my.
Yeah, in fact, there's only 4 different faces for the scientists, and then only one cop face here. By the way, the the cop we saw at the very beginning that was letting you out of the tram was Barney.
Oh, that's the Barney?
That's Barney, and he makes so you play as Barney in Half-Life Blue Shift, which was the second expansion for Half-Life, but he's also in Half-Life 2 as a more realized character.
Right.
A little bit of trivia there for you.
Right.
And so after getting off the tram and everything, you go get in your suit, and then you hop on over to the testing facility here. And the idea here is that they've secured the purest substance they've seen in forever, right? So they've been doing tests on various materials, and they're like, this is the purest sample we've got. So we're gonna really increase the, amplitude of the test to make sure we get the results we're looking for. And little tiny glitches are happening as you are approaching the testing chamber, like a little computer console kind of fizzles out, and people are like, oh, we see this weird thing, but it's nothing.
It's nothing.
Yeah, and guess what? It's actually a whole lot of something here. And
what was this? You said there was a term.
Yeah, so you
what?
push the crystal into the beam that's coming down, and it sparks this resonance cascade here.
Oh.
And so let me see if I can pull this up. So basically the way that this works in the Half-Life world is that when excited by specific forms of energy at a correct frequency, it will resonate these materials. And so in this particular case, the crystal that you resonated was strong enough to open a portal between Zen and Earth. Zen being the alien world that presumably they've been I guess trying to explore for a while. As we see later on in the game, there's test subjects, so it's very apparent that they've had kind of contact with them.
Yeah. And so you push this crystal in, and everything kind of starts going crazy. You get teleported various places and various positions, and everybody's kind of yelling about things going wrong. And then you kind of come to, and it turns almost from like a first-person narrative game to like first-person like survival horror.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, and you know, straight up zombies coming in. And you know, again, we were talking about the start of this game was cinematic, but that doesn't stop at the start. There are other places in this game where there's cinematic elements. So one of the first things you see moving out of the test chamber is you go up to the elevators and you see a bunch of scientists kind of falling to their death. You're like, wow, that's crazy.
Yeah.
And then you then move on and you see a cop that is shooting a zombie guy, and you can actually intervene and help out there. And this happens multiple times throughout the game, where you can save either a scientist or a cop, and they'll actually join you as a teammate, and that's all optional. You know, in some situations, they'll actually then escort you to an area to unlock a place with a bunch of loot and power-ups for you. So that's really, really cool. It almost gives you the sense of choice. It's like, you know, of course you're going to help them out, but at the same time, if you don't want to, you don't have to, and you don't get that extra little experience there.
Yeah, but also if you're kind of, it's your first time to going slow and you don't realize and the guy dies, then you can pick up his pistol and it's like, boom, now you got a gun. And it's like a really cool dual chance there.
Yeah. And so kind of going back to what we're actually doing here. So the facility is essentially on lockdown. And so you're told, we need to, you know, get out of the laboratory here. And you can't use the main doors because again it's on lockdown, so you have to kind of go through access ports and something. At some point they actually say that the military is here to save you, so just get to the service. The military will help get you out of this situation. So you're like, great, I have a clear objective here. Yeah. And so just get to the surface at any cost.
And let's talk about the enemies real quick, because we've already encountered a couple in the video here. Is the first thing that you see a head crab? I think,
yep, the head crab is correct because you pick up the crowbar, the iconic weapon. It's like, you know, if you know the story of Samson, Samson from the Bible, he's strong because he has hair. Freeman's strong because he has a crowbar there. And so that's, you know, that's always a momentous occasion in the Half-Life games, like Half-Life 2. I know they like throw it to you, and that's a big deal.
Yep.
This is like, you know, your mainstay there. So you get the crowbar and you get to kill a head crab, and then you see a zombie, which is actually just like a humanoid creature with a head crab as a head.
Right.
That little detail is really, really cool.
Yeah. And the head crabs are basically like face huggers from Aliens, where they just jump on somebody and then it seems like they have control over them, or just kind of, convert them either way.
Yeah. Yeah, and one of the areas we just passed that I wanted to talk about, because I think a lot of people will remember this, is there's a bunch of boxes that are suspended by a crate or a cable.
Right.
And you have to sort of jump on the boxes to get from a higher level down to the lower level.
There are many platforming areas in this, which come to think, I mean, this was kind of the first, maybe like Doom had some kind of hidden things where you have to sprint off at the right angle, but Half-Life, especially with like full on jumping and the speed of the gameplay, like without sprinting, your character is just so fast and you strafe around, and it's just very, very fast paced, and you can jump huge distances. So there's a lot of places, whether intended or not, you can make sick jumps and get cool loot, or just even skip parts of the level.
Well, what's really weird, and I'm sure that you kind of picked up on this as playing, is when you're moving, they try to instill this sense of momentum in the character. So if you are moving forward and then you stop, you'll actually kind of move forward a step or two. Sure. Which is a little bit weird, and it makes it feel the game feels a little bit floaty, especially when you're trying to hit those precise jumps there. Yeah. But I understand, like, as them trying to move the medium, I understand the sort of reason why they're like, let's see if we can add this like sense of realism to it there. Ultimately, I think they went away from that model, but It is. It's almost like you're on ice, like an ice level in Mario or something there.
Right. And they went with this decision where, and I think it works out well for it, that you can quick save and quick load at any time. So with that, they can really make some like dangerous puzzles or insta kill scenarios because they know, okay, they can just quick load and everything's fine. And even if you don't fully die, sometimes you want a quick load just because, okay, I'm down to like 5 health and I don't know when there's going to be health next. And
yeah, well, this is a great example of quick loading and quick saving. So you go to this area where there's a lot of these red laser tripwires. And so there's 2 types of tripwires. There's the blue ones, which will explode if you touch them. And the red ones, they will activate turrets. But what's really cool about them, of course, if you don't touch them, none of that happens. So they do a really great job of laying this out and sort of like, all right, well, if I jump on top of this thing and then jump over here and duck under here, you can get past all these turrets without anyone actually being activated. So that's really cool. But after you finish that, you go on and you hear the scientists screaming, "Oh, they're here! The military's here! They saved us!" And they run off, and he just gets shotgunned to the, or actually, I guess it's an assault rifle to the chest. And then you realize the military is not here to save you.
Yeah,
they're here to clean up.
Yeah, and that makes me wonder. So, I mean, I don't know I don't know if you know, but like these turrets that are set up that are firing on humans, are these malfunctions or are
I think the intention here is that the military has actually set this up because again, they have the blue claymore things.
Right.
So I think the idea is that the military is sort of is as much as possible like we need to quarantine this area, set up the tripwires and the turrets there. But there are also ones that are more like maybe like a couple minutes ago we saw there was it was like a switch on the wall, and you could pull the switch, and that actually deactivated like something that looked like it was attached to the building. So it may be that there were some defenses already in Black Mesa because this was like a secret research base, and like all secret research bases, you have to have
with crazy experiments. You never know what'll happen.
Yeah. And so what we've done now is we've made it to the surface. You know, there's the Marines that are trying to kill us, and the first glimpse outside, you hear this bombing run. It's like pew.
Oh yeah. And
you're going through this sequence, and then you kind of go through some tunnels there, and you think you're safe. That there's a helicopter that's flying or following you, and the ceiling kind of caves in. And these 2 guys drop down and rappel. Yeah. And they're shouting, they're like, "Get them!" And I'm like, I played this when I was, I want to say 16, 17, and that blew my mind. I was like, what is going on? They can have enemies that drop through the roof on these ropes, and it was incredible.
Yeah.
And again, we're seeing a sequence where you flip a switch, and an enemy or a zombie crashes up through open the door, and kind of surprises you. And these things happen on such a regular basis. And again, all these were completely new at the time. And so this is just really trying to cement the fact that the way that they went about these scenarios was completely innovative for the first-person shooter series.
Right. And I was going to say, like, to that point, there are a lot of scripted events, but they're not scripted such that, like, you're forced to watch them or even notice them sometimes. Like, you can totally interrupt them generally. Like, enemies, like, rappelling down, you can kill them immediately, and it's like, okay, it's done. And they're all interactable events pretty much, which a lot of games today will be like, focus the camera, take control away from the player, this thing's happening, and now you get your gameplay back and react. But no, this is just like, if you see it, you see it. If you don't, you don't. Whatever. Just, it's there. It's happening.
And what's really interesting, especially in the Half-Life 2 and beyond, is Valve started having developer commentary with their games. And it's really cool because they go over, like, how do we have this really cool event here, this really cool VFX we spent a month of programmer and VFX time on.
Yeah.
We want to make sure players see this. How do you draw their attention to it without forcing them to? And a lot of times it'll be like a AI character like shout something, hey, over here, or the lights will sort of steer your direction in that way. But it's a very, very cool challenge that they've taken on here.
Yeah.
And we just got to a part where we have a tram that you can step on, and you can ride it forward and backwards. And again, this is really cool because later on in the game, there's combat scenarios with these trams. And so you can use this tram as a mobile thing of cover.
Right.
You know, it's like you can even, and what I did, and again, blew my mind, is there was an enemy down a narrow corridor and he was ready for a fight. I put a satchel charge on the tram, let it go, and when it was near the enemy, I blew up the satchel charge, and I'm like, oh, it worked! That just is so cool.
Right.
So there's definitely a lot of places in the game where there's environmental puzzles and mechanics for you to play with. You know, everything between enemies fighting each other to being able to, you know, use the claymores, the explosive claymores to your benefit, like get a guy to follow you and then duck under a claymore and he runs into it.
Right.
Or even activate the automated machine guns. There's just a lot of ways that you can almost play around with every combat scenario.
Yeah, and they give you a lot of things in the environment, tons of like exploding crates and barrels, and you can just be like, okay, there's a barrel, and where's the next group of enemies, and then lure them back and then take care of them that way. So we're in this section now. I think you're kind of still in the middle, quote unquote, of the boss fight, which is this completely seemingly invulnerable, three-headed, sharp-nosed, taloned, kind of tentacle monster that pops up out of this big cylindrical room. And I don't know if I think they mentioned to you that it can't hear, or it can't see rather.
Yeah.
So you need to like sneak around it, and if you step or if you shoot or something like that, then it'll notice you and kind of turn towards you, and it basically just slams into the ground over and over and tries to stab you with its beak.
Which you could use to your advantage if you want to throw a grenade over in one location, so you can sneak by him. You can do that, which is really cool.
Yep. Use audio cues that way. Now, before I go on with that, I will preface that I played the Half-Life Source version, and that version was rather buggy. So if you decide to pick up this game and play it, I would suggest the original, or even there's the Black Mesa. I think it's like a fan remake. It's not completely done, but I've heard good things about it, and the Source one there were a lot of spots that were kind of buggy.
Interesting.
But I hadn't played it before. I played the original, so I wanted to see what the Source was like.
Well, to kill the boss that you were talking about, the three-headed thing, a scientist is basically telling you, because you said he's coming out of the cylinder thing, and the cylinder thing happens to be underneath of a rocket.
Right.
So they're like, hey, I think maybe we activate the test fire on the rocket and kill the monster. But, you know, it's never that easy. There's no oxygen, there's no fuel. And so you kind of navigate this area, and you have to basically turn on both of these systems. And once you do, you're treated to this really, really cool VFX and sort of payoff of just this big fireball. And then the monster kind of screaming out and slowly dying there. Which, by the way, I want to comment a little bit on the VFX in this game, because they do a really great job on selling these really momentous experiences. And everything from the entrance or the intro where they have the resonance cascade to the deaths of a lot of the bosses. It's like they have all these like particles that are going off, and they really make it seem like, hey, this is a big event. Good job. You hit a milestone. Here's a flashy reward. And so I wanted to call that out. It's just making you feel really good that whatever you did was good.
Yeah, very rewarding.
Very rewarding.
And on that same note, audio as well, for both negative and positive. Like, you get to know certain sounds, like the turret prepping to fire, and you're like, oh, and you start to freak out, or just like lobbing a grenade into enemies and hearing that boom, boom, and then silence. You're like, yeah, that's right, I did that. And we hadn't talked about it very much, but the HEV suit that you pick up at the beginning, I think it's really the reason that Gordon can like run around and gun as a physicist as his background. He's surviving all this crazy stuff. But the suit has like an energy level and then a health level, or Gordon has a health level, I suppose. And the energy gives you, I think, gives you damage resistance to everything, and possibly more towards like environmental stuff like radiation, which there will be pools of radiation, and
coupled with like the old Geiger counter clicking as you hear it, which is I always love in video games.
yeah, more to that sound design. But yeah, we just hadn't gone over that, so I wanted to mention it.
And almost immediately after killing I don't actually have the name written down here of what that boss we just fight, but the next boss is this gargantuan that kind of comes out, and he's killing some of the alien, or not the alien, the human grunts. And essentially what you need to do is lure him to an electrified, it's like a power grid sort of thing. Right. And again, what I think is really cool about boss fights is most of them are not bullet sponges. Yeah. Most of them are, for good or bad, is very much like figure out this sequence of events, whether it be level based or there's some sort of trick to it, and then do the thing to kill the boss and move on. Yeah,
and there's not too many of them to the point where you're like, ugh, another gimmick, like this and that. They're pretty sparse. But yeah, you'll run into them kind of later, and they might not necessarily block your path. They're just kind of there to bug you, but it's I don't know, cool to see it in a different setting there.
Yeah, and then after that, you go on this rails, the level on rails again, which is really cool. But before you get to this level proper, you meet a security guard, and he tells you, he's like, hey, the scientist told me to give you a message. You have to launch a satellite, which I don't think they really explain why, but they said that the satellite is going to counteract the effects of the resonance cascade that happened. So you're like, great, I have an idea of what I need to do. So let's ride the rails to do so. And this is almost a non-linear level. There's a clear path you're supposed to go, but as you're going down the rails, there's a lot of these switches you can hit, which redirect where you go. And I think when you think about it conceptually, I think it for me, it's one of those levels where it seems like it could be very painful. We're like, oh, I got to figure out how you connect these rails onto these rails, and it's not that bad. It's mostly straightforward, but it does give you a little bit of freeform gameplay where you're like, I'm gonna get off the tram here and then go kill enemies there.
I just like the scenario that just happened on the video.
So what just happened there, Lobos?
Well, so you ducked under these claymore mines because they're lasers, and as long as you don't touch them, you're fine. So you were like, well, save some ammo, duck under. And then ahead of you, there are some red lasers, which indicate, hey, there's going to be some turrets nearby. And you kind of cautiously make your way forward to observe, but then you get too close to a turret and it triggers, and so you immediately abandon ship, turn around, and whoops, there's some claymores and explode. There's a lot of situations like that.
And again, I left that in purposefully because I like that because that's the type of fun that it doesn't feel cheap. And I think that's one thing I can really applaud the game for is the deaths here. You're slapping your head, you're like, I'm an idiot, but also that was a cool scenario.
Right. And it was totally your fault. And again, like, there are some difficult parts, but with the save auto quick load and quick save, like, it really makes it less painful and kind of more, unless you're getting really frustrated, a little more humorous. Like, when I die, I'm just like, oh, I blew up. Okay.
Yeah, and there's definitely scenarios where there are clear ambushes there, but they always give you a clue. And again, there were some games in the past that would sort of like gotcha moments where it's like, I got you, save and reload because you didn't know that thing. And there was no way for you to know that. But like in Half-Life, it really helped enforce that, like, well, if you're careful and you're observing the environment, you're going to pick up on these subtle clues that you might not know what they mean immediately, but be on your guard, start being more cautious around here and kind of look around everywhere because there might be something here that's going to ambush you.
Yeah. So we're still on the rail sequence here on the tram. The cool thing about the tram is you can have it go forward, you can have it go backwards, and you can control the speed as well, and it goes pretty fast. But you have this constant danger of trying to figure out where to get off, but not jumping onto the actual rail itself because it's electrified. So if you are just it kind of limits your exploration, or at least, yeah, it makes you have to wait makes you want to wait for kind of like a platform that you can jump off and look around. Although they do have very skinny, like
guide rails.
Yeah, kind of like guide rails jutting out that you can actually jump on and run around with. So on occasion, if I knew that I had to backtrack a bunch or something, I just wanted to leave the tram where it was, I would jump on the side and just run around.
Yeah, and so when I was talking about scenarios, this is a perfect example. So let's watch this here. But what's happening here is you run up to the, you have your tram, and you see sort of a branching path. You see going forward, there's an elevator for the tram to go up, and to the side, there's an elevator it's just you to go up. And so I'm like, well, let's check out the side elevator first. And you go up there, and there's explosive boxes.
Right.
And so I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. Throw a satchel charge on the elevator. Send the elevator up, explode the satchel charge, which explodes the explosive boxes, and that's really rewarding. So once you do that, you jump on. Ultimately, you do need to take the elevator up with the tram.
Right.
And so once you get up there, you'll see there are blood stains all over from the enemies you killed, that they set an ambush up for you. And so this is one of those scenarios where if you're going up this elevator, they would be able to shoot down on you and really kind of wreck your day.
Right.
But you feel like you got the advantage, and that's just such a great feeling there.
And for me, I went up the elevator first, and then I was like, oh man, so I killed all the guys, and then I found the boxes. And the way I did that was I threw a grenade between this little gap in the boxes and then hit the button as the elevator went down, and that worked out.
That's awesome.
But I also tested my crowbar first to see if that detonated them. It does.
It does. Okay. It's a very unstable material there to blow up by getting hit with a crowbar there. So we're just finishing up on the rail level here. You kind of have one last scenario where you have a very long narrow corridor, and there's a grunt that's got like an RPG he's firing at you. And so it's pretty easy to dodge. You just kind of let the tram go and duck below, and he will just shoot over you. And so that's pretty easy. And the next thing you do is you're making your way, now that you've exited the rail system, you're now kind of outside again, and you're making your way to I guess it's like the control station for the satellite. And you sneak up on some enemies, and the grunts are kind of chattering. They're like, well, if I see Freeman, I'm gonna kick him in the head or whatever. and then of course you just throw a grenade at him and kill him.
Right.
The funny thing is about the grenades though is it's almost like he's throwing a shot put, because he kind of he's and I feel like the grenades are like, you can throw it 10 feet at most. I just didn't feel like they flew very far there.
Yeah,
but
you have to look really high and then like try and angle it like that. But even still, they're not super. They don't have too much distance on them.
Yeah. And Gordon's a physicist. He's not a baseball player.
Right.
So it's
he can do the math for how he needs to throw it. But then
that's exactly right. I'm sorry, you got the angles there. So, and again, as you're going up to the control tower here, there's 3 more tripwires that are wired to explosives. And there's a conveniently placed steel box to the right of the steps there. And so, again, a really cool little physics puzzle, which Half-Life 2 really leaned into physics puzzles, but you can sort of see the start of their thinking on Half-Life 1, where some very, very light physics work there.
Yeah. And here they give you this cool environment. You can more kind of immersive stuff where you see all these consoles. Like there's this holographic image of a globe. So you're just like, man, what was going on here? They got, I guess this is their satellite launch facility where they monitor all that stuff. And then you get to, I remember this very clearly from the first time I played it too. You get to launch this rocket and you get to watch it go and lift off. And as soon as you see the bottom of the rocket, the entire screen like goes white because you're like, oh, I'm blinded. And I just remembered always, look away.
Yeah, but once the rocket's up, they don't really tell you what you're supposed to do. There's no PA system that's like, rocket launched. Oh, by the way, I want to talk about the PA system because I love the voice. So first of all, a little piece of trivia there is that both the HEV suit and the the PA system, and even the Marine grunts, all of their dialogue is voiced to single words, and so they can string together
all sorts of sentences,
all sorts of things. Which is why you hear it's sort of like weird enunciation on behalf of the grunts, where they're like, "Get Freeman," or something like that. But I love the PA voice because it's sort of like this. I don't know how to describe it. It's like a distorted. Yeah,
it's just like that. It reminds me of like the Star Fox voice when like you would start a level and it would be like burp, burp. Like I don't know.
It's really cool though.
Yeah, it's very like deep and muffled and kind of like staticky a bit.
Mm-hmm.
But it's
like
cool.
I always think the phrase that always comes to mind is always like access denied, and it's just really distorted. Now I want to talk about this one scene here. We took the railroad and we basically jumped our train off the tracks into some water there.
Heck yeah!
And we go to this scene where there's a new weapon, the crossbow. By the way, we haven't talked too much about weapons. We could talk about it a little bit more, but we do get the crossbow here. But it's in a shark tank that's suspended over water, and so it's like,
why wouldn't it be?
Okay, I know what's happening here. I'll play along. So you jump in the shark tank, and of course it falls into the water. And let me see if I can get the official name of the creature here, because I do have it written down. But it's like a shark type creature. Here it is. It is called the
ichthyosaur. That's like
I'm glad you pronounced that instead of me.
Well, that's an actual that's an actual prehistoric beast, I believe. Did anybody live in the prehistoric age? No. So I think they just like stole that name. But yeah, this thing is like. So I actually found a pretty cheesy way for these guys. If you just have your crowbar rather, and you just constantly swing it, he'll run up to you and then get hit, and then he just gets stun locked all the way dead. Yeah.
Even here, I kind of just use the crossbow, and his I wouldn't say that he survived being an apex predator, because he certainly didn't seem very very challenging there.
Yeah.
Now I remember watching you play this part on stream. So there's a sequence where there's a catwalk, and then in front of you there's sort of two doors. There's one that has electrified wire over it, and that's like the clear way you were supposed to go if there wasn't electricity. And then there's like a hole in the wall there.
Right.
And so you can actually jump through the electrified thing, and you take a little bit of damage, but the intent is you're supposed to kind of crouch jump through the small hole to the wall there.
Right. And I think that leads to the generator room where you turn off the power, and then that wire is not electrified anymore, and you can just move on through. Yeah,
and then ultimately you get moved through this room, which is, I guess they're like pistons that are going up and down.
I don't think my pistons were active when I did this.
I don't think they have to be, because there are boxes on the ground that you can use to sort of physics puzzle your way up. There's a ladder nearby there as well.
Interesting.
So yeah, that's really cool. I didn't realize that you could do this without activating those pistons.
Yeah.
So there you go.
So about the weapons, let's see, what do we have so far? We've got the regular pistol, a very iconic one.
You got a 9mm pistol, which is what the security guards will use.
Sure.
We got the crowbar, of course. We got the Colt Python, aka the 357 Magnum.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, we had a poll over on the Saturday Morning Gaming Twitter, and you folks all unanimously, I shouldn't say unanimously, but it was unanimous. So 57% of people said they liked that weapon the best.
Magnum. It's a good weapon.
It's a good weapon.
It's got tons of damage, good range, and high accuracy. And what more can you ask for?
Yeah.
I personally, my favorite is the crossbow, because you can zoom with it. I love sniping. It is a projectile, so if the target's moving, you have to like lead it. But I just love how it like. It applies a ton of physics to the character.
So let me interrupt you, because this scene was really cool. So you go up in, you're taking an elevator up, and you see a security officer, and security officer is like, "Freeman, you're here. I've got a special message for you. Whatever you do, don't do." And as a kid, I distinctly remember playing this at like, it was like at midnight on a Friday night. And that freaked me out because I was like, oh my gosh, what is happening? And I actually stopped the game there. I was like, I can't deal with this. And again, when you play, the graphics aren't as immersive now, so it's harder to get caught up. But when this was like the pinnacle of immersion, that was like, oh man, I'm so deeply moved by this. And so ultimately what you find out is there's like these female assassins that are like little ninjas in these black suits here, and they're very mobile, and they just basically killed the security officer, telling you not to do a thing. And the thing was probably, don't go in this particular doorway.
Right, yeah.
Because what happens is the lights go out and you hear like some voices. It's like, we've got them.
Yeah.
And then you get kind of clubbed over the head. You wake up and your vision's a little blurry, and you see the security guards or the Marines. They're like, what are we going to do with the body? And one guy's like, what body? and then it kind of fades out, and you wake up into a slow moving trash compactor with conveniently placed boxes to get out. But it was kind of cool. You start to realize, that that the military has been trying to kill you, but this is sort of like, no, they're kind of really trying to dispose of all evidence. Right. They just want to cover up this whole scene here. So this was a cool moment. And
they strip all of your weapons. So I don't know how common of a thing it was when this came out, but I feel like it was. It's not often that it's just like suddenly you're like, oh, now I have to start from scratch again. But they of course give you the trusty crowbar to get out of that compactor situation.
And they very quickly ramp up and give you all your weapons again. Yeah. And so you're kind of like, you wake up in that trash compactor and you realize you're in like this reclamation center or recycling center or something where it's basically disposing of both biological and radioactive waste.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of cool that, it's like there's a whole facility. And again, what's awesome about this game is you think about what we were doing a half hour ago in the video. We were just going to work on a normal day.
Right, yeah.
And you don't have any idea like the lengths of this facility, but this thing has like a whole conveyor, like an assembly line, conveyor belts all over the place. And it's like this is just one facility of Black Mesa.
And they kind of imply that with the whole intro, and you're on this tram and you're seeing all this stuff and you're like, oh, okay, cool. It's a giant facility. But then you also get to go to so many like different parts of it. And you're like, wow, it really was that big, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. And so ultimately what you want to do is you make it to the end of the recycling center, which is like this big chomper thing, which is sort of like, I guess it's like just last ditch, making scrunching out the materials, and then it goes into like a radioactive waste pit or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
And so you narrowly avoid dropping into there, and then you kind of get out of the ladder, and you find yourself in this secret, sort of like a secret research laboratory.
Yeah.
Which is cool because maybe it's more secret than the one you were working at.
Very perhaps. Yeah. And there's these several rooms where you can turn on these lasers. Most of them need to be powered first, but then you can turn on these lasers and they kind of redirect through these prisms, and you're like, huh. And you also pick up a new gun.
It's the Gauss gun.
Which is a super powerful gun.
Yeah, because there's two modes to it. There's one where you can just kind of like fire single shots, and that's not very powerful. But the more powerful thing is you can charge it up, and then it fires one big bolt. Yeah. And actually, that has a little bit of backwards momentum as you fire it.
Yeah.
Which, again, that's a really, really cool little touch here. But ultimately, once you powered up these lasers, what you do is that will all funnel to this large laser. I guess it's like a testing laser, because you see there's a very I'd say like a 2-inch thick steel plate that laser is basically set up to hit, and there's a sign that's like, don't block this, or don't fire laser while the shield's not down. It's like, well, guess what I'm gonna do to get out of here. So you actually, again, physics puzzles. You have you put a steel crate under the steel slab that comes down, and it's like, well, I can't go down, so it goes up, and then the laser fires, and of course doesn't hit the steel because it's raised, and it will just basically annihilate the concrete and allow you to jump out and back to the surface here.
Yep.
Now, so I want to kind of go back to the weapons here because we kind of stopped midway through.
Sure, yeah.
So we've got the MP5, which is basically your submachine gun.
Which has the very good alternate fire of chunking a grenade, a special grenade, different from your regular grenades you can pick up and throw.
Yeah, this is more of an it impacts or detonates on impact, whereas the other grenade, they're timed, so they're not as good.
Yeah, but it's super quick to fire and very powerful, so a very good tool to have.
And then we've got the crossbow, which again Lobos really like. I'm not a big fan of it because you can zoom, which is really great, and it is very precise. But unlike the Magnum, it takes a while to shoot another bolt.
Right. Yeah.
And enemies Marines will die with one hit through the crossbow, but they'll also die with one hit from the Magnum. And so I prefer the kind of multiple, like being able to shoot off 3 or 4 rounds to the Magnum. But yeah, the crossbow has its uses, especially for enemies that are that you really need to zoom in to be able to hit there.
Yeah, and we didn't talk about the shotgun. There's an assault shotgun, which for a shotgun has some dang range to it too. You can shoot this thing from far away, and it's not like just buckshot. It's like a single shot, and very, very effective. I use that for so much of the game. As long as I had ammo for it, I was using it.
Yeah, and actually, I just realized it's not the Gauss cannon we picked up. It was the Tau cannon.
Oh.
I don't know why I said Gauss. That might be another name for it, but we have Tau written down.
Gotcha.
Now, talking about weapons, up here we've kind of exited the facility, and you're on the side of the mountains, kind of scaling alongside the facility.
Yeah, I believe so. Correct me if I'm wrong. It looks like there's a part where there's like a big kind of dam, and you have to sneak your way in, and it's almost like you're now infiltrating like a military facility, and so now you're surrounded by enemies, and everything's kind of a danger zone for you, as opposed to necessarily just trying to get out and escape.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
And so this is another indication. You pick up a rocket launcher, and an attack helicopter comes out. And the rocket launcher is pretty cool though, because there's 2 modes to it. There's a dummy fire, which you just fire and it goes in a straight line. But there's a more useful one where you sort of paint a reticle on what you want to hit. And the rocket will steer in that direction. It doesn't necessarily mean it will hit that target,
Right.
but it'll move in that direction. So for something like a helicopter that's moving around, very easy to actually hit there.
Yep.
But yeah, to your point, yeah, absolutely military base, because once you infiltrate that, now you're facing tanks and stuff like that, which, your explosives are really going to come into play here.
Except that I simply walk to the side of this tank.
Oh yeah, of course,
and use my crowbar on the top of it, and enough crowbar hits will just blow it sky high, but also blow you up with it. So not the best idea.
But so what's really cool though is so this is a military base you're invading, but not only you are, but you see the aliens are as well. We actually just saw an alien drop ship that dropped off one of the alien grunts here. And then you get to this spot, which I think is really, really cool. And it's very like Full Metal Jacket-ish. I don't know if you've seen that movie.
Yeah.
But there's you get to a spot on the military base where there's a security guard. He's laying on the ground. He's still alive. And he's calling out to you. He's like, "Oh, help me." It's clear he's been hurt. And so I think your first instinct is to go over and see what's up. And you get shot in the back by a sniper. And again, those are those things where it's like, it was telegraphed.
Right.
If you kind of thought this through, you'd be like, what's going on here? But like me, like an idiot, I'm like, oh, what do you need? And it's like, yeah, I get shot in the back, and you feel like an idiot, but you feel like, man, that's a really cool scenario there.
Right. Yeah, and so now they present this kind of sniper enemy who you can't even necessarily see, but they've got little nests. And the best way really to take care of them is to just lob a grenade into their little nest holes. Otherwise, they just constantly plink you for some serious damage.
Yeah. And you kind of make your way into this little military base, and there's a scientist saying they've rigged the place to blow, but you still need to get through it. So
Right.
you see all these claymores, and up until now you've been fine with just like shooting claymores as you see them, like backing away and shooting them. But the way that this is set up is more like if you shoot the claymore or touch the claymore or do anything, it actually blows up the whole building.
The entire building. There's like a warhead in there also, or some sort of rocket that just if anything blows up, you game over right there, because everything blows up too.
And once you kind of maneuver around that, you take this little elevator ride down, and you get a new weapon, which is the Hive Hand.
Yes,
which
an alien weapon.
Yeah. Now, I want to take a pause here and just watch this part, because I've got the Tau cannon, and this is a really great example of the momentum that you get from firing it. So if you hold down the charge too much, that will actually backfire on you. And I actually backfire off the map. So that was
awesome.
That's a fun little thing.
That's good stuff.
Yeah. So you get the Hive Hand. I actually forgot that this recharges ammo over time. So this is sort of like your infinite projectile ammo. And what the Hive Hand is, it's like it shoots like these little bees, and they home.
Yeah.
And they recharge over time. So they're pretty effective at killing some of the smaller things. And,
it's not too powerful, but you get infinite ammo, and there's like regular fire mode, which is a standard fire rate, and then right click is like a faster unload, but maybe less damage, I think. I'm not sure, but
and I remember watching this part on stream where you're at this helicopter landing area, and there's a sealed door, and you have to kind of work around the side passages to get a turret to blow open the door. Right. And I remember watching you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do. But that's what I really love about that games, kind of back in those days, is they would have a very small area. Like, here's a puzzle, and sometimes you couldn't figure out, maybe there was a button you had to press somewhere, or maybe there was something you had to experiment with. But I always kind of enjoyed that, because it's like a very small, you're like, I know that the solution is contained somewhere in this, like, 1 minute of gameplay.
Right.
I just have to explore. Yeah. And I think that process of discovery is always very, very fun. I wouldn't consider it great game design.
Right.
Because it does lead to moments where you're like, I just don't know what to do.
And then it's always something like you were like, oh,
I didn't know I could do that. Right?
Either that, or it was something so simple that you were just overthinking it. I constantly overthink puzzles. I'm always like, okay, so if I pull this car over here and use the physics to knock this over there, and just use it.
Yeah.
Use the thing to explode it.
Yeah, and then you kind of after you enter the base, I guess there's like a car repair center. I'm not sure.
Yeah, they gotta maintain their vehicles.
Yeah, this is the first thing that kind of stuck out at me, is like, how does this fit? But essentially, there's a car garage with like 3 cars. It looks like it could service, and there's these jacks that you can raise. And you have to basically press a button, jump on one of the jacks, and it raises up, and that's large. Raises it up high enough that you can actually jump through the wall there. Yep. It's a little goofy. I was like, all right, well, Half-Life, you've been good to me so far, so we're not going to nitpick that one.
Well, they can't just give you a straight up exit. They got to make it all exciting to get out of there.
Well, and speaking of exits, the next place you have to go through is a place where there's a big gargantuan following you. Now, this is the second time we saw the gargantuan. First time was with that electricity puzzle we had there.
Right. Yeah, it's kind of a runaway sequence. It's pretty straightforward where to run to, but then when you get out of there and you've kind of made some distance from the guy, you're in this kind of outdoor area. They're talking about the air raids happening.
Yeah, because they say they're like, forget about Freeman. We're abandoning. If you have any last-minute missile locations, call them down now and get out of there.
Yeah. And so then you kind of explore this place, climb on top of this cylindrical like tank or something, and on top of that, there's like a little like a targeting system where you can control the vertical and the horizontal aiming parameters, where you can kind of not triangulate, diangulate.
I guess it would be biangulate.
Yeah,
I don't know.
A position for airdrops.
Yeah, because you have like sort of a rough approximation of the terrain around you, so you can kind of be like, all right, well, this is, I think, I think this is the place where the gargantuan is. You drop the airstrike on it.
Yeah, and I think I tried that for a while before I was just like, I can just blow open the place that I need to go, so I'm just going to do that and keep running. And also by this point, like we said, there's aliens kind of invading everywhere. There's also these little pustules on the ground that act as little jump pads. Yeah, trampolines. You just run over them. The physics on them is kind of wonky, but generally if you step on them, they'll launch you into the air. And
yeah, I agree. I had weird situations where it's like you step on it and it just activates so you don't go anywhere. Like I felt almost you almost have to like jump with it. I don't know. I couldn't figure out like reliably 100%. So I'm like, the 80% of the time I use it, it works. That's good enough for the needs of this game.
And after that sequence, you enter another facility, again, where you kind of need to enable power or oxygen or airflow.
What you need to do is you have to get to the top of the building, and the only way to do that is to flood the reactor cores.
Right.
Because that will then open up I think it either opens up a passage or allows you to swim to the top of the thing.
Yeah.
And so there's two pumps in kind of opposite areas there. And so, you basically go to the pump, you flip it, of course, monster closet, which is basically you flip a thing, monsters jump out and try to kill you.
Spawn in, yeah.
Yeah, and so
because they're just teleporting in from Zen at this point.
Yeah, and so you really get the sense that this portal is just like completely unstable if they're able to freely port over here, and actually kind of makes me wonder thematically what the range is on the area of effect of this ability to portal. So what I mean is, could we be in like Australia and aliens porting over there, or is this like there's something special about the military base, and so only this place right now aliens can teleport in, but maybe over time it expands its area of influence? I'm not sure.
Yeah, you never know. It could go deeper into the lore in a way where somebody has control on the other side, is actually teleporting them in on you. You never know.
Yeah, well, you do at the end of the game. You do have some hints that the G-Man. Actually, we should talk about the G-Man, but let me finish that statement first. The G-Man kind of has employers that have sort of set up some of this stuff here. So throughout the game, you see, actually at the beginning of the game, you have kind of you see the G-Man, but throughout the game, it's a G-Man. He whether that means government man or some people say Gordon Freeman. There's a lot of theories on the internet about that one. Anyway, he kind of is that like really typical government conspiracy type guy where he's got the black suit, very he's middle-aged, like 40, 50, gray hair, slick back.
I would say it's more of a navy suit.
Okay.
I think isn't it blue? Isn't it blue?
It might. I might.
Yeah, we'll see.
We'll have to check our eyes on that. In any case, he speaks with like a really weird cadence.
Yeah.
Can you imitate that?
For the free man, I talk like this, and it's like his inflections all over the place, and it's kind of unsettling, and like what's with this guy? Is he okay?
But you actually you can see the G-Man in 9 times in Half-Life, and so I might just read some of these. So like when you're riding into the tram, you can see the G-Man, and he's standing with this other scientist. Later on in Anomalous Materials, one of the levels, you can see him arguing with the scientist. And then like on this level right here, we just saw him. He kind of was on the other side of a door. You could see him through the glass, and he walks through a teleporter. Yep. And so and he shows up in numerous times, kind of like off camera, in sort of like almost secret areas as like little Easter eggs. But he's always watching you, and so this is very creepy. Yeah. And so, but when he walks through that teleporter, you're like, okay, I kind of see he knows about this technology. They're using it, and that's why he's able to sort of like pop around, look at you, move on. Yeah. But kind of talking about the teleporters here, there was a room a little bit earlier, which was an optional room. Essentially what it was 2 doors. There was a teleporter in one room, teleporter in the other room. You can only open one of the doors. And so what that does is you open the door and you go into the teleporter, and it teleports you to the other room. And so it's a very safe way to like teach the player they are this is how a teleporter works, which was cool. And in fact, they kind of use that similar mechanic in Portal 2 to sort of like teach a player like, okay, we're going to teleport you to a familiar place so you know, oh, this is a teleporter. But that's actually an optional thing. You don't have to go through that. Later on, there's these teleporters you have to go to because there's this like spinning
it's
platform.
a pain. Yeah, there's all these platforms that are spinning, and there's multiple teleporters, and each one goes to a different place. And like one will lead you to a secret area where you get some things, which is cool, but others will just completely reset your progress. And it's just one of those kind of trial and error puzzles that you got to teleport your way through and deal with timing and everything.
Yeah, and some of those teleporters will give you access to secret areas where it's like, here's a bunch of ammo and equipment. And some of them are just like they will drop you to your death.
Yeah, yeah. One or two of them is just insta kill. So then you kind of meet up with the scientists and a security guard, and they're talking about how they need to send you to Zen, the alien planet, and they give you an upgrade to your suit, which allows you to do a long jump. Which
it's really fun to do this long jumps in Zen. Like, so Zen. First of all, when you enter Zen, you hear a voice, and it says "not another." It's sort of muffled and slurred a little bit, but I think when I go to try to, as we encounter them, I explain the voices you will hear here. But in any case, yeah, Zen was, I think, widely criticized by the players and critics alike, that this is sort of like a really weak end to Half-Life.
Yeah, well, like you said, the bosses that we had fought weren't really damage soaks or anything like that, sponges, but kind of the first big enemy you meet here is like this egg sac spider looking creature that pretty much is just that. It's a damage soak, and you have to unload a ton of damage, and
it spawns like little baby head crabs that attack you. They're really hard, but it's sort of like you said, it's a damage soak, but it's a 3-stage fight,
right? And
so what happens is, as you do enough damage, it'll crash through one of its webbings you can't get through normally.
Right.
And ultimately, after like the third time, it's the last stand of it. And so you just kind of, like you said, just shoot it until it's dead.
Yeah.
So it's not that interesting of a mechanic there.
Yeah, the gimmick is more like you need to damage it enough, and then it will grant you access to the next area until it reaches its final layer, and then you can kill it for good.
Yeah, and it's really weird because you're at the bottom of it, and the only thing you can... So you fall down to the bottom, and it's still above you, and you can shoot it, but the only thing it can really do to you is spawn head crabs.
Right.
And I don't know. It's not a great boss fight.
Also, again, in Half-Life Source, this guy was completely bugged. Not completely, but like largely just didn't attack me half the time. So I was like, okay. And then when it dies, it does this huge explosion, which if you're close to, kills you. And I was like, what? Okay. What? I mean, it's an alien. It's whatever. I get it.
Once you kill that, it actually, I think it actually just teleports you to a new area. Which again, what was really cool about Half-Life, the kind of the first 3/4 of the game, is everything felt connected. Zen is very much like, well, here's a level, here's a level, here's a level. But
it allows them to do this, to give you this vibe of like almost that you're out in space, because there's like these tiny little islands, and you have to use the long jump to jump from island to island, and a bunch of floating platforms, and it's just a big platforming nightmare while there's a bunch of enemies that spawn and shoot at you. It can be pretty challenging, but again, the quick save, quick load helps a lot here. One funny thing though is I did the tutorial before I played Half-Life, and in the tutorial they're like, here's how you long jump, and I was like, oh, okay, cool. And then you don't get the long jump till like 85% through the game, so it's like,
the long jump
there it is.
Really does change how you play. It's really fun, and I wish they would have had more of that.
Yeah, I was expecting to just speed run like massive jump through the game, but
So the level that we're on right now is called Interloper, and when you enter this level, the boss, his name is Nihilith, I think. He basically Nihilith, yeah, something like that. He says, "Lie, you all die."
Oh yeah.
So that's that's that, and then you enter an alien facility, which almost looks like a slave, like a mining thing. But when you enter here, he says, "Alone, aren't you alone? Aren't you alone?" So I don't, when you put all his sentences together, I don't think they really spell out a story to me.
Right.
It's not like he's saying, "Oh, okay, actually, I'm the good guy and you're the bad guy," but
yeah, they're just kind of trying to, like, I guess, intimidate you in a way, or kind of instill some sort of fear, like what is that? How is he speaking to me? And these conveyed emotions are
because it does
place.
Definitely seem telepathically that he's communicating with you.
Yeah.
And so I just wanted to mention, because we haven't talked about this yet, the glue-on gun.
Right.
Because we were using it a little bit to kill some of these alien guys. The glue-on gun, imagine just like the proton pack from Ghostbusters.
Yeah, exactly. It just channels this beam, and you can just aim it. Or if you're familiar with Overwatch, it's like Zarya's beam. You just...
Yeah. And actually, what's really funny is the asset name in the Half-Life source, or not Half-Life source, but Half-Life game, is actually just weapon_Egon.
Egon, yeah.
After Egon from Ghostbusters. So that's a little odd. And then you enter this... so as you go through the alien facility, there's rotating platforms and conveyor belts. It's kind of not very interesting.
It's super. There's a lot of enemies to kill. It's very tall. You have to traverse it, and it takes a long time. But then you make it, and you kind of encounter this big altar portal that you're like, whoa.
It's like a red sun.
Yeah.
And when you enter this area, you hear "Last, I am the last," and so you teleport in there, and you're faced with this giant baby-like monster.
Yeah, baby thing that it's floating, and it's got a bunch of limbs.
It actually has like a third arm coming out of its stomach.
Yep.
So,
why not?
And it's also, they had these alien masterminds that were floating around in the game earlier.
Right.
It actually just looks like a bigger one of those.
Yeah.
But the mechanics of this guy, he's pretty easy, but some of the more annoying things is he'll fire these green orbs at you, and if you get hit by him, you get teleported to one of 3 areas, and they'll cycle. So they'll do like area 1, 2, and 3, and then they'll repeat all of those. But it's basically you go in there and you go into this area, and there's monsters to fight, and there's little puzzles to solve. Now again, those are optional. If you don't get hit, you don't have to go through any of them. But as you do go through them, he says more stuff. So there's 3 things he'll say as you go into those areas. One, he'll say, the truth, you can never know the truth. The second thing he'll say is, disease, you are a disease. And then the third is, die, now you will die. So...
yeah, not very friendly sounding.
Not at all. And so again, the boss fight room here is just a big cylinder. It's like almost like a hive, like a beehive sort of thing.
Sure,
like you're inside of a beehive.
Yeah.
And there's these 3 crystals that other than glowing, I don't know that they have like a strong indication that they're part of the fight.
Right, yeah.
So he has like these little orange orbs circling his head, and those vaguely match the crystals, but there's no like clear like energy coming from the crystal to the boss.
Right,
so
right.
I think it's easy to consider those just decoration, but ultimately I'm pretty sure you have to kill them before you can start damaging the boss.
I think you do. I think if you take them down, they dissipate the orbs that are following him in some way, and then he's susceptible, and you deal damage to him, and then his head opens up, and you can shoot into his head. So
I'm choosing this pretty bad, because there's these platforms with iron spikes in front of you, and they will actually block all his orbs. So because he'll fire the green orbs at you, and he'll fire these little white orbs that just damage you. Actually, they seriously damage you. They do a ton,
yeah.
But you can still shoot around them, so I just kind of cheese this fight because why not? But yeah, I seem to remember when I first played this game that I would jump over his head and shoot like this little glowy ball that was inside of it for a lot more damage. Yeah,
so the Half-Life Source version was just completely broken. So he would fire the green orb that teleports you like maybe 5 seconds after you've gotten back to that room. So he was just constantly teleporting me, and I was like, okay. And for some reason, I swore that I remembered like the crystals on the walls zapping him. So I was like, there's no way I need to destroy those, because as you see in the video here, when you finish him, you see like the zapping. So I kept going back to those side rooms and going, there's got to be stuff I can do here, but there wasn't. And it turns out you just deal a bunch of damage to him, and he didn't even get zapped on my playthrough. He just sat there, and then I could shoot him until he died. And I was like, I remember bouncing up and shooting down. But anyways, that's the final fight, and then
you kill him, and then you are teleported, and the G-Man he greets you, and he basically he says, you know, good job. I've taken the liberty of taking all your weapons from you. Zen is in our control. R being like probably this government conspiracy thing.
Right.
He also congratulates you on your handiwork. He's very impressed with the damage you've wrought. And he's like, I've recommended you for the job, a job to his employers, and you have two options. You can accept or... and then he's like, I can also offer you a fight you will not win.
Right.
And so I actually go through both of them just for the purposes of this video because I think they're pretty short. But basically, you're on a tram, and he's like, hey, if you accept, I'm going to open this tram door, and there's a portal. Just step into the portal. And if you don't, I'm going to assume you've rejected our offer. And so what happens is he teleports you to a place that looks like Zen, but probably isn't Zen. So it probably means that either they have another containment facility with all these aliens, or there's another planet like Zen that they know about.
Right.
I'm not quite sure.
Yeah.
But it's basically just like full of alien grunts. And again, with no weapons, you're just, all right. And the screen just kind of fades out.
Yeah.
And I don't remember specifically what it says on the text. I guess we'll find it. If it just says like you failed or whatever. But if you step into the portal, it just kind of just says like you're hired. So yeah, here's the scenario with the alien grunts. They're just standing and what does the text say here?
Subject Freeman.
Operation terminated.
Yeah.
Post-mortem.
Observation terminated. Yeah. Yeah. So they just kind of dispose of you, and you're just like, whatever. Like, you want to help us, fine. Then you can't survive with all this knowledge. So.
Yep. And then if you go into the portal, it just says, you know, subject hired, I think.
Yeah, like status hired, I think, something like that.
Yeah. And then it just cuts to the credits, and
it's pretty sparse endings, but you know, it was kind of building up to it the whole way. So.
Oh yeah. I don't think that needed a cut scene. I think again. Yeah. Having everything in game there was fabulous. It would have been sad to see a cutscene that was kind of laid on top of that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the credits of Half-Life here.
Yeah.
So fantastic game, and we also had some other people that completed the game.
We did.
But before that, let's talk about our next game.
Oh sure, absolutely. Yeah. I hope you guys enjoyed Half-Life. So we'll be doing the next episode on was it the 10th?
August 10th.
August 10th.
Yeah. And
our next game is very near and dear to my heart, and it's a Mario, but it's, I would say, an underrated Mario. It's Super Mario World 2: Yoshi's Island. I love this game. I think it's come in more into popularity recently because one of the songs from it is like in all of these meme videos now. So like. It's like everybody knows that song, but they might not even necessarily know what the game is from or they played it. But I love Yoshi's Island, and it means I get to play through it again. And yeah, very excited.
Great. Yeah, so if you're interested in joining the Hall of Heroes, all you need to do is complete. You don't have to complete the special levels, just complete the game.
Just reach the end credits.
Hit the end credits and snap a photo with your name next to it and send it either to us on Imager or directly to our Twitter account, which is Saturday M Gaming, and we'll include you in the show. Yeah. So again, the Hall of Heroes is an opportunity for us to engage with the community. It's a bunch of people that have completed the week's game, this week being Half-Life, and they've just sent an image with a little comment that has maybe like their impressions or just a shout out or something, and we just like to display the images on air with the little message there. So Lobos, why don't you take us through the Halls of Heroes applicants for Half-Life?
We had a bunch this time. Wasn't the most that we've had so far?
Yeah, we had most by far.
Yeah, awesome. So first up is Datenshi Senpai, who said, Here's my Hall of Heroes submission for Half-Life. Great childhood game. It was really fun to replay. Also great podcast, guys. Keep up the good work. That 1 HP left from boss fight, though. Oh, nice. Damn. Nice.
Good job.
Oh, I guess this is not moving this. Okay, boom. Splov1 said, I got hired. So we know which ending he took. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Splov. Nonsense Megia. Hey, Lobos and Ryan. Had a great time playing through Half-Life for the first time. Looking forward to the new podcast episode and the next game that's going to be covered.
Congratulations.
Yeah, that's awesome that you got to play through it for the first time. Thanks to, or I guess because we were doing that for the podcast. Tobunaga. There we go. My Mass Effect runs are based on Half-Life Opposing Force because Shepard needed a first name, and it totally fits the whole G-Man dropping people in to save the universe.
Yeah, so interesting fact, the character in Half-Life Opposing Force, which is one of the expansions, is named Adrian Shepard. So,
Shepard.
Nice.
Yeah.
Shepard. Nice pull on that one.
Yeah. Kihaku says Half-Life 1 is actually just Gordon Freeman's elaborate interview for his next job.
Yep.
It is, though, and that's one heck of an interview. Like,
they don't really tell you what your salary is going to be, but you get to keep your life.
Yeah, it's a rough one. Gaming Steiner. It took a while, but loved every minute. Lots of great memories of playing this with friends.
Oh, great.
Thank you, Gaming Steiner. Harotham. First time I actually finished it. Hope I'm not too late. You're not. You got it in. Yeah. Got it in time. And Brisk Mountain. Finally got through it. Thank you guys for giving me the motivation to replay these classic games. Love the podcast. Keep up the good work.
Yeah, and so next up, we do have our list, our high score list, which, by the way, I thought that the number one spot was going to firmly go to one individual, but another one at the last minute submitted their application and continued the tie. But let's take a look at those leaderboards.
Brisk Mountain and Gaming Steiner up tied in the first place, 20 points. And the points are based on how long it takes us to play through the game generally.
Roughly, yeah.
Roughly. Is it basic off the time to beat?
No, it's actually how long it takes me to beat.
Okay,
so
gotcha.
it's basically anything under 10 hours is 5 points, and then after that, every 10 hours is 10 points. Well, let's start actually with number 7. Kind of work our way up.
Which there's a lot of number 7s right now.
There are.
Kihaku, Tobunaga, Splov1, Datenshi Senpai, the Kyle Mack, and Lulu Kachu all tied for 7th place.
Actually, I might have messed up there because Lulu Kachu, Jazz Never Sleeps, and Dog Type all have 10 points, so they should be number 5.
There you go. They
Sorry
should
about
be number 5.
that, Lulu.
Little typo there, no problem. And then we got Nonsense Megia and Harotham, both tied at 15 points.
Yeah, and leading the pack again, Brisk Mountain and Gaming Steiner at 20 points. Will one of them fall?
Who knows? Yoshi's Island is
it's a tough game.
The last time I played it, I remember it being longer than I remembered. So it's not super short, but it's not terribly long either. But it's very good. I love it. It's so well everythinged. So,
we've reached the end credits of this show, so I want to thank everyone so much for listening to us on Twitch or watching us.
Yeah, be sure to subscribe to us on whatever your favorite podcast listening service is, or watch us live on Twitch on Saturdays at 9:30 a.m. Central.
Yeah, if you have any feedback, please email us at SaturdayMorningGamingShow@gmail.com, or follow us and comment on us, anything on our stuff on Twitter on Saturday M Gaming.
Yeah, and just to remind you guys, next episode is basically the last of our 5 kind of pilot episodes. So if you've got feedback, we'd love to hear it, just to kind of form the future of the show and how we move forward with this. So we would appreciate that through email, Twitter, whatever is easiest for you.
Yeah, and a special shout out to TechnoWax for much of the music in this episode.
For Saturday Morning Gaming Show, I'm Lobos.
And I'm Ryan. We'll see you August 10th for Super Mario World 2, Yoshi's Island.